Thank you. We have a wonderful treat as our luncheon speaker, and that is Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Shultz. I'm sure she's familiar to you all, not just as a congresswoman from the 23rd District, which is in part Dade and Broward County, but also for her appointment as chair of the Democratic National Party since 2011. So Deborah is on television quite a bit explaining the position of the Democratic Party, but what we're so excited about to have her here today is that she is known to be such a strong supporter of women. And in particular, from the time she joined the Congressional Caucus for Women's Issues in 2011, she has been focused on women, children, legal and educational interests of them, and women's issues in general. And as a champion for working families and a member of the Democratic Women's Working Group, Congresswoman Wasserman Shultz fights every day to ensure that there are family-friendly policies coming out of Washington and workplaces in South Florida that protect women as well as nationwide. She is a proud co-sponsor of legislation to create paid family leave and medical leave to assist low-income families in affording quality child care and to ensure that women receive equal pay for equal work. The Congresswoman also knows that reducing barriers to women fully participating in the American workforce is good for families, for our economy, and for our nation. We couldn't be more excited about having Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Shultz with us today.
Thank you so much, Hillary, and really thank you for your work in finally achieving a long fought and sought-after goal here in Florida to make sure that we ended discrimination, irrational, unacceptable discrimination against gay couples who simply wanted to provide a loving home for children who needed one, and now they can. So it's, and we've made more progress just in the last week. So remarkable. And so thank you very much for your pro bono work in that area. I want to thank Randy Melzi as well for your leadership. Where is Randy? There you are. For your leadership at the Americas Society and the Council of the Americas. The scope and the work and the reach of ASCOA has grown tremendously. And I know that Susan couldn't be here, and it's great to have you here in South Florida. Really, I'm here because I know that the world needs more organizations like ASCOA that promote open dialogue, the exchange of ideas and solutions, and bringing our world closer together. And we have inspiring women filling this room, including the panel that just preceded me, and having this Women's Hemispheric Forum is so critically important. Bringing us together, bringing women together is absolutely essential. We're playing a lot of catch-up with our friends on the other side of the gender perspective. The Good Old Boy Network has existed forever, and we've talked for so many years about building a Good Old Girl Network. Ours would look obviously very different than men's, and using forums like this one is a way to make sure that we can embed the notion of sisterhood and make sure that we can be there for each other, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. But this young professionals of the Americas and Women's Hemispheric Networks program is, to me, one of the things that is the most important of the work that you do. The investment that these networks make in mentorship and support and professional development of our future leaders, particularly female leaders, is truly invaluable. Now, as women, we all know that every glass ceiling shattered didn't come easy. And that's why we always have to reach back as we climb and lift up our sisters. We have to make sure that we are looking behind us and affirmatively pulling up another woman on the rung of the ladder that we have just left. And too often, our predecessors fought so hard to get up on that next rung, or even to start the climb on the ladder, that there really wasn't enough time or space in their mind to be able to concentrate on doing that. But I think we've made enough progress now for us to really be able to remember that we need to replace ourselves. Now, sometimes the lifting is going to be heavy, and there are obstacles. But that's when we have to remember the shoulders on which we stand. Those of our mothers and our grandmothers, the women who dreamed big dreams and made the sacrifices so that we each could be where we are today. And now, as a busy woman myself, I know it can be difficult to find time in our already incredibly delicate balancing act that each of us are doing to take another woman under your wing. But it's so important. When we as leaders encourage other women to step up to positions of leadership, we're ensuring that the barriers that we are breaking down today aren't just rebuilt all over again tomorrow. Now, I want to share my own story because that's a lot of what this program is about, just to show you, one of the pathways that exist. And I know each of us has a story, and I wish I had been here all day just to be able to listen to other stories, because hearing those stories and knowing you're not alone and listening to just a piece of the stories of the panel before me is it's helpful to know that you're not isolated and doing this by yourself. When I was 25 years old, my boss at the time, then Florida State Representative Peter Deutsch, decided to run for Congress. That was 22 years ago. And he knew of my longer-term goal that I wanted to run for office someday. Now, I thought that I would take the path that most women take, even still today, which is after I got married and had kids, got a little more established, and they got a little older and more independent, then I could pursue my dream of running for office. And so many other women think that way also, that when they really think they'll break out and be able to achieve more significant goals, it's later on down the road when they are a little bit more entrenched. Now, I had just gotten married. We had just bought our first house. That was not an ideal time to run for office in anyone's life, to say the least. I had, as I said, always planned to take that more traditional route. I had no money, no name recognition, and the good old boys in our community told me it was not my turn, and they'd let me know when it was. And Representative Deutsch called me at home in the middle of the legislative session in 1992 and said, you know what? The last map that I saw, that was a redistricting year, your house is in my district. I know you want to run. We've talked about it many times, and you're planning for this many years down the road. No time like the present. You should run for my seat now. So after I picked the phone up off the floor, and I'm not kidding. After I picked it up off the floor and absorbed what he had suggested, every reason in the book why I couldn't do it was at the top of my mind. I already had enough concerns of my own, enough doubt for an entire gender. But of course, on top of my own doubt, as I started to explore it, there were plenty of experienced politicians, more than enough around to make sure that I questioned whether I could do this at all. Instead of being seen, as I started to explore it, I took about a month to decide whether it was something I should do. But instead of being seen as a bright, young, confident up-and-comer, as many young men in politics and business often are, and when you start thinking about the possibility of doing something significant, I was initially received by so many, almost exclusively men, as a silly, naive little girl who was overstepping her boundaries. Now, I could have stopped there. I could have just said, you know what, this is going to be way too hard. I could have listened to the naysayers, and I'm really not sure where I'd be if I had not made that leap at 25 years old. But instead, what I did is I took a look around me. I looked at the faces of the other members of the Florida House of Representatives, and I realized that none of them looked like me. Very few of the members were women, and none of them were as young as I was. And I had encouragement, real encouragement from my mentor, Representative Deutsch, who was a man. So let me assure you, as we talk about mentorship, that it doesn't always have to be a woman. There are a few good men out there. I knew that I wanted public policy in Florida to reflect the priorities and the issues that were important to me and my generation. And I realized it wasn't going to happen in a body made up so overwhelmingly of older white men. Not that older white men can't be advocates for the issues that younger women care about, but it's when you're not coming from that life experience, when you're not looking through that lens, it's just different and less likely. So I had to make up what I lacked in connections and resources with shoe leather. I knocked on every damn door in my district, and 25,000 doors later, With very little money, I won a 6-way Democratic primary with 53% of the vote and won. So, yeah, it was very exciting. We had runoffs in those days in Florida, so you had to get more than 50% of the vote in the primary in order to be able to be the nominee and avoid a runoff. So no runoff, and I thankfully it was a Democratic district, so once I was the nominee, I was the likely winner. So I didn't listen to the old guard. I didn't take a step back. And I had a supportive mentor, and I had so many Jewish mothers and grandmothers that I knew who were with me and who were telling me in their own way to step forward as I knocked on those doors and as I reached out and talked to them and sought their advice. So every word of encouragement, every woman who opened her door and in me saw her daughter or her granddaughter, those are the women that sustained me through a long, hot primary in 95-degree weather when it rains every day at 3 o'clock in South Florida. Imagine, trudging out in a neighborhood in that every single day. But women will always do better and go farther when we're supporting each other and when we're working together for all of our interests, because it makes our voices that much stronger. Now, as far as we've come over the decades in strengthening women's voices, we still have, as they say, such a long way to go when it comes to women in both the professional world and in public and political leadership. I'm confident that all of you in this room are too familiar with the statistics, but I'm going to go through some of them anyway, because if we keep them at the top of our minds, they will be what propels us to try to change them. The fact that only 5.9% of heads of state globally are women. The fact that only 4.8% of Fortune 500 company CEOs are women. And the fact that here in Florida in 2013, women in the workplace on average made only 83 cents for every man's dollar. These realities demonstrate the subtle ways institutional sexism discourages women from entering, staying in, and achieving in the workplace. In many cases, it's not overt. You don't have the board of directors of a company explicitly saying, well, I don't think a woman can be CEO. And a boss isn't specifically saying, I'm going to pay this woman less because women are inferior. I mean, those things aren't verbally stated. An electorate isn't consciously deciding, we can't have a woman president. What if she gets her period? I mean, those are not things, at least, that are stated out loud. That they might be thought, but out loud statements are not made. But the way we're socialized to devalue women and women's work, combined with a lack of female role models already in these positions, teaches our sons and our daughters that there are limitations on what they can achieve. Now, all people, including women, internalize these messages and too often end up perpetuating systemic discrimination. And I've tried to be so conscious of that as I raise my daughters and my son. Now, there are also times when it is explicit. When Malala Yousafzai, a young Pakistani girl who I'm sure we're all familiar with, who just won the Nobel Peace Prize, is shot in the head by the Taliban for simply daring to advocate for equal education between boys and girls. I mean, that's explicit and bang you over the head discouragement. When women in Saudi Arabia can't get to work because they're not allowed to drive. When a woman running for office is asked about her outfit instead of her foreign policy positions. Now, I have, as I'm sure every woman in this room has, we could all tell a story, run into explicit sexist discouragement. And let me say, it's not always from a man. When I was running in my first race for Congress in 2004, my Republican opponent at the time publicly stated, this was her campaign platform, that there was no way that I could be both a good representative and a good parent to my children at the same time. That was her campaign platform, that she said every single place we went. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, she said it so often that even when I went to the Miami Herald editorial board for my endorsement interview, the editorial page editor at the time actually asked me, well, how are you going to do it? Now, never mind that I had been in office for 12 years and had 3 children already and had been doing it. I was just proposing to change capitals. So what I said to him when he asked me that question, and the 2 women members of the editorial board that were also part of the interview picked their chins up off the table that he'd asked that, was, well, I'd be glad to answer that question if you could assure me and yourself that you would ask a man who was a dad running for Congress the same question. And he sheepishly realized that he would not have asked a man that same question and moved on. But I said, since you asked, I will tell you that the people that matter the most in determining whether I'm going to do a good job as a member of Congress are the people that I represent. And the people that matter the most on whether I'm doing a good job as a parent is my family. And I got both of those covered so far, so not to worry. Not to worry. And that's what elections are for. So whether it's a man or in some instances a woman, the larger point is that these are attitudes and systemic discrimination that you're going to face. I mean, we're going to be up against it no matter how much progress we've made to date. And they're the reasons that I can't stand up here and tell the young women in this room that pursuing your professional ambition will be a piece of cake, that all the obstacles have been cleared away, because they haven't been. But these are examples that are also a testament to the dire need in our world for bold and smart and hardworking women who stick together. Women who know what they want out of their lives, aren't afraid to go after it, and will bring other women along with them as they succeed. And that's so critical, because we've got a lot of history of success. We don't have a lot of history, or nearly as much as we should, of bringing other women along with us. What inspires me to be that kind of woman are my daughters and my son. But when I think about this in this context, my daughters, I have an 11-year-old and Shelby, and a 15-year-old daughter, Rebecca, and she has a twin 15-year-old brother, my son Jake. And I think every day while working both as a mother and a member of Congress about the world that they're growing up in, the world that I want for them and the opportunities that they will have. And I want them to know that they can be and achieve whatever they want because they see that other women are achieving. And the only way our daughters will feel limitless is if women today see the limitless potential of their colleagues as well as younger generations of women. Too often as women are on their way up, they feel in competition with one another instead of part of a sisterhood. Now, look, we're all going to be, healthily competitive. I mean, we should be. It's not like you should defer to another woman just to be a sister. I mean, we're going to be competing for the same things, going after the same goals. But in the broader context, in a corporate environment, in a political and public service environment, where we aren't directly competing with one another, we should be supporting each other. And there are ways to do that. One of the most effective tools of oppression, we know, is dividing and conquering. But if we instead choose sisterhood, if we instead realize that bolstering other women strengthens us individually and as women, we will create a lasting impact for women and on the world far beyond what we could each individually achieve alone. So to the more established professional women who I know are in this room, I urge you to find a younger woman to mentor. And I know this is the choir, so that's probably already a box you've checked. But share your experience with that younger woman and push her to reach for the stars. That's something my parents had pushed me to do, and what I heard in my head from them every single day of my life, or my conscious life. And to the younger women in this room, because it's on you also, don't wait to be asked. Don't wait for an invitation. Don't wait to ask to run. Don't wait to be asked to apply. Don't wait to be asked to be mentored and to be a mentee. There will always be people in this world that don't respond well to assertive women. But many of those who think the role of women is to be quiet and meek are also the people who think women shouldn't be educated, shouldn't be driving, and shouldn't be an elected official or a CEO. You do not have time for those people. We do not have time for them. In the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, which can't be repeated enough, well-behaved women rarely make history. Now, I'm honored. It's one of my favorite quotes. I'm really honored to be able to be here today encouraging all of you to misbehave to your heart's content. And I'm proud to be working for and with you to stand united together as women. So thank you so much again to the American Society, Council of the Americas for having me here today. It really is organizations like yours and forums like this that will enable us to make sure that we can raise generations of women that come after us to be the leaders that we need to take the world forward. And as we all heard so many times before, that when it comes to trust, when it comes to respect, any focus group and poll that I've ever seen shows that women have more of it in spades when it comes to the public's perception than men do. So we need to use that advantage and exploit it to its fullest extent so that we can make sure that we can help our country and the world achieve greatness. Thank you so much. Yes, move to audience questions. Done. Any questions?
My name is Vanessa Zavala. I'm originally from Venezuela, but I'll be working with Vital Voices soon, so excited
Wonderful.
about that.
It's a great organization.
My question is regarding the type of educational institutions that we have nowadays, and its incongruencies with the work life that we have. Traditionally, you would go to school, you'd graduate, find a job, you're set for life. You would stay in the same job for your whole life,
Right.
and get a retirement, all of that. Nowadays, you tend to not have that. The actual opposite.
7 different jobs now over the course of
you have people that are
your working life.
overqualified, that are very educated, very smart, but have no practical experience. I just recently graduated from my master's, and I'm still actively looking for jobs, which would be mind-blowing to someone 20 years ago.
Right.
And the institutions of not only high school, college, and postgraduate don't necessarily always cater to the world that we live in right now. The practical experience to actually getting an education with different organizations or having different corporations to mentor these students, to have an organization within a university to say, these are the options. Let's have an incubator in the university for students to actually express their ideas, and not only that, but let me tell you about how you can fund these things. And especially for women, which I believe that we're just a bit shyer sometimes, and when we say something, oh no, that's already been done, or it's silly, it's too much. How can we start changing institutions in order to cater to the world, the professional world we live in, so we can have not only more practical experience, more businesses, create more jobs, and be more confident within ourselves?
Well, thank you. There's a lot of parts of your question. Let me try to get to what I think the crux of it was. And since I was here for the last part of the Q&A in the panel before me, to try to give some practical guidance. And I get asked this question, particularly when I speak to young girls, young women in college, very often. The way I get asked, more succinct. I don't mean that critically, but the succinct way that I get asked that question is, I want to do what you're doing, or I know where I want to go. I want to have a full professional life, a full family life. I don't want to have to choose. I don't feel like I should have to choose. And practically speaking, I don't know, how did you do it? How do I get there? What are the building blocks? And how do I connect the dots? So, you've got the college education box checked, and you have your graduate education box checked, you have a degree, and then, you feel like there should be a tremendous number of opportunities in front of you, and maybe there aren't. Now, I don't know your own background, but one of the ways I always respond when I'm asked this question, how did you, forge a pathway to achieve your goals? I mean, getting the education, the best education I could, and that was extremely important. But grabbing every opportunity, and where there wasn't an opportunity readily apparent, creating an opportunity that I could to do internships and volunteer opportunities and community activism and anything to do with the field that I had chosen, which was public service, I grabbed. In fact, in college, one of the first things I did was I went to the University of Florida, so go Gators. But I went to the University of Florida, went down to the City Commission at City Hall in Gainesville, and walked into the office and said, hi, do you have an intern program? And the answer was no. And I said, well, I'd like to be an intern. Is there any city commissioner that I could talk to? And there was one city commissioner, of course a woman, in her office at that moment. I went in and talked to her. Her name's Jean Chalmers, and she was a former mayor. And she sat down and talked to me, and I guess saw in me, someone that she knew could help her. And she created, she created an internship. And so I began working for her, ultimately presented a project that she had given me in front of the entire city commission as a college student, a Keep America Beautiful, anti-littering program, and which the city commission adopted. And then she ran for the legislature. And so I was already interning for her, so she moved me over to her campaign for the legislature. And so I got campaign experience. Then she decided she needed to pay me to do that because she had more work for me to do. So it snowballed, and I have so many other examples of things that I did. You have to be a no task too small person. Let me tell you, I might not always be right. I might not always convince everybody to do it my way, but I will never lose because I got outworked. I will never not achieve a goal because I didn't work hard enough. Shoulda, woulda, coulda is not in my vocabulary. And what happens sometimes is that women, men more often, but what we can't allow to happen, let me say it that way, is we can't allow ourselves to fall into a trap of, you know what, I've already worked hard, I've gotten this education, I've done all the things I think I'm supposed to do, and the next step should be falling into place for me. You gotta, in this competitive environment that we're in now, especially as women, you gotta work for it. You gotta be willing to do the nitty-gritty, back-breaking work that has no sizzle and isn't sexy, and prove yourself to be valuable. And that's a pathway to get your foot in the door. Because I will tell you that when I'm looking for staff or when I'm interviewing potential staff, and I know my predecessor in the legislature, Peter Deutsch, also did this. If you didn't show a whole lot of initiative in the fields that you were seeking work in prior to coming to me, to be honest with you, a trial run is I'm not really interested in. I want you to have shown some initiative on your own, and I'm not your guinea pig to see whether this job works. So this is the field you want. But that's, just how I look at it. I hope that's helpful. Yeah.
My name is Bertrand Vaz. I'm with Hemispheric in Mexico City. And I remember that when I was in law school in Mexico, my university had this program where you could apply to be an intern in the U.S. Congress.
Oh.
So I did apply, and I was an intern in the U.S. Congress back in 1995.
Okay.
And having seen that, and having seen all these women working for women issues and all that, I found it very enriching to ask them what were the challenges that they were facing at that time. Mm-hmm. And it was back in 1995. Today, and you having been a congresswoman for all this time, for 10 years, what are the challenges that you face now as opposed to the challenges that you were facing when you started? Because I believe that challenges evolve, and once you've tackled some of them, new ones, come up. And so it would be interesting to know, with your at this stage in your career,
sure,
what are those challenges that keep you busy and keep you concerned?
That's a really good question, because they have evolved. One of the, particularly with my intern program, the way I look at it, I believe in practicing what I preach. So, and forgive me, I know there's a little testosterone in the room. I'm speaking to the estrogen here today. In my intern program, I'm not afraid to tell you that all things being equal, tie goes to the woman. When we have a very competitive internship application process, I get more applicants for my intern program than we can accept. And I really believe that young men have so many more opportunities, particularly in politics, that, push comes to shove, if it's equal, the woman gets it. Now, it doesn't often come down to that, and I have male interns too, but I want to make sure that I'm creating opportunities for women that they might not otherwise get. Because that's an example. Having an internship on your resume from a member of Congress, if that's what you want, if that's the path you've chosen, that's something that helps put your resume at the top of the pack when you ultimately apply to be a staff assistant and other positions that you might be seeking. Over the years, there's probably less of a difference between when I began in Congress in 2004 and now, because, God, the wheels of progress unfortunately turn kind of slowly. But compared to in 1992, when I first ran, it's pretty significantly different. I was just married and had no children then. But as a younger woman, all the way back then, it was rough. I mean, I was patted on the head. I had been a staffer and then was elected to the legislature. So the first challenge I had was just getting beyond the perception that my colleagues had that I didn't belong there in the same way that they did. And, you know, a few times I had to be, more than a few times, I had to balance the need to be assertive and make sure that I was acting equal so that I would be treated equally. And you know, didn't, other than seniority, because, you know, in our system, seniority is king or queen. So I had to balance the appropriate amount of deference to a more senior colleague with the need to not have that deference seem like it was gender related or related to my youth, because it doesn't matter in this country who you are. If you're a duly elected member of a legislative body, you're elected the same way as every other person who's in that body. So, so acting the part has really been important. But all the way through the process, you know, I've faced struggles through media questions like the one I described. But even, you know, in my case, I mean, I don't know why I can't get past, it's not just me, what my hair looks like in any given interview. Or, no, I'm not kidding. Now, I mean, obviously I have very curly hair, distinctive hair. It's my trademark now, and has been forever. But you would not believe, even when I first ran, the number one piece of advice you would think would have been substantive. The number one piece of advice I got when I was going through the process of seeking advice on whether to run was, you got to take a haircut. Debbie, I love you, but you got too much hair. You got too much hair, and it's not professional, and you're going to have to take a haircut, and you really should straighten it. Well, ethnically, and my hair is a source of pride of mine. And quite frankly, in answer to the question that I always get of how do I balance, I don't want to get up 45 minutes earlier to blow my hair out. Sleep is more important and valuable and makes me more effective. So, you know, appearance challenges still exist. You know, just the innate sexism that occurs. And we're still at a stage where, even though we've had a woman speaker, you know, and we, you know, have had a woman almost be elected president of the United States, and we have some women CEOs, I still feel like, and I know from personal experience, everything I've achieved, I wasn't the automatically presumed most likely candidate. I mean, I will tell you, I did not. If I never indicated an interest in being chair of the DNC, I would not have been chair of the DNC. If I had just, even though, you know, in terms of who would have been thought of based on the qualities that a president would look for. And this isn't a comment on President Obama, but if I had not voluntarily indicated my interest, I would never have gotten on the short list. Never. So initiative, whereas men, you know, there was a whole population of men that were automatically put on the list. You know, I got myself on the list because I spoke up. Yeah, you want more questions? Sure. From a man? Okay.
So, hello. Thanks for coming. I'm actually here because, first of all, my name is Antonio Peña. I'm actually a shareholder here at Greenberg Traurig in the corporate M&A practice.
Wonderful.
And I'm here because I think it's important for men to get the same message. I mean, you've spoken of how sometimes it's overt, the type of discrimination we hate to see. Yes. Sometimes it's more stuck in your subconscious. And my question to you is, how do we send this message to that other gender? You know, guys that like me.
I'm so glad you asked that, because I think that is so important. Parents have to model good behavior. Fathers have to model good behavior. I'll tell you, the son that my husband and I are raising is growing up, seeing his dad not just serving in an equal parenting role, but as a disproportionate parental role, because I work in Washington. I am not in South Florida with my kids and my husband, which is the hardest part of what I do, from Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Friday most weeks of the year. So, I say all the time that my husband fully embraced the notion of equal parenting. It's not equal parenting. We have divided the responsibilities. I'm the school parent, and he has responsibilities, and I'm the school parent no matter whether I'm in town or not, because we all have our strengths. But you have to acknowledge that in a relationship. But it's really important that we raise our boys to break out of those typical gender roles, to clear the table when dinner is finished, to pick up a vacuum, to take the garbage out, to involve our boys in every aspect of domestic responsibilities, and make sure that we talk about at our dinner tables the importance of equality, and do our best to raise kids to embrace the notion of equality. And then in the corporate world, this is the thing that I always lament and that I worry about. We need more firms like Greenberg Traurig, and I don't know how much Greenberg embraces this or not, but the mommy track really exists. And the idea that women have not been discriminated against simply because we're women in a corporate environment is baloney. It's the progress that is. Hillary Clinton, when she ended her presidential campaign, talked about that hardest and highest of glass ceilings. I would argue that we'll probably elect a woman president of the United States before the truly hardest and highest of glass ceilings is broken, and that is really obliterating that mommy track. And you have corporate executives, particularly men, and some women, unfortunately, breaking the cycle of not choosing to hire a younger woman because her potential is perceived as less simply because she might have a baby, or you might have to make accommodations for her. We need to blow up the whole corporate structure and business structure so that, I realize there are job sharing and there's flex time and so many more things that, my parents' generation didn't have. But we have so much further to go. And really, we need to adopt we need leadership in corporations to adopt a mindset that as long as the work gets done, it doesn't matter what time of day it's getting done or what day it gets done on. How many billable hours are logged is important. When they're logged should not be important, as long as the work gets done. And if that mindset is adopted, then it will really help women achieve true equality. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.